Testing, 1, 2, testing. Testing, 1, 2. Hey Richard, welcome to the stream, man. I kind of messed up my ribs yesterday and I didn't make it. How's the audio? Hey Corona Ken. How's the audio doing, guys? Hey Guppy Crib. Good. I'm glad I've finally gotten rid of that issue. Audio loud and clear. How's everybody doing today? As I've put in my, I'm a day late and a dollar short with this video. I either broke a rib or pulled some muscles pretty badly yesterday, so I just wasn't up to the actual streaming, sitting in this chair and streaming. Hey Laura. Once again I just pulled it. I guess, or I bent over and I only noticed it after the fact. So yeah, I'm walking wounded today. It literally could have been from coughing, but I just don't know. My background today is the Kelly Kapowski tank from the video I did not too long ago. I'm not sure, Laura. Yeah, Corona Ken, after 50 it is all downhill. Really, after 40 it's all downhill. But yeah, the 60s are not fun. Although I keep hearing people say the 60s are the new 40s, but I'm not so sure about all that. I noticed that Danny's Aquariums is streaming. I didn't really want to mess up his stream. I know he's desperately trying to get to his camera money. I didn't want to mess it up, but there's probably going to be a lot of other streamers coming on today from Reefapalooza, so I figured I'd go ahead and try to get shoehorn this stream in. Once again, I really don't have any Yep, Corona Ken. Getting old isn't for sissies. Ah, awesome. Yama says he has hit his goal thanks to Dean H. Dean H is a real supporter of the fish fam, and kudos to everyone that has helped him try to get. Corey is live on Instagram as well, huh? Now, I don't really follow Instagram very often, so I guess I'm just going to have to run up against Corey. I don't mind at all if you guys go watch Corey. Corey's kind of our godfather of the fish fam, so I would fully understand people watching him. I don't check Instagram. I usually just check YouTube and Facebook, and if I can't see anybody that's going on that's deserves their spot, then I go ahead and live stream. My 5 o'clock slot on Saturday, I kind of Corona Ken says, did my water changes today, now balancing TDS. I'm better looking than Corey is? Oh my God. I once had a friend describe me to a prospective date that I was uglier than a mud fence, but that I was a good guy. So if I'm better looking than Corey is, Corey better hide. He needs to start wearing a bag over his head. I've never been much for looks. I've never really cared, never really invested anything into it. I know it's counterproductive, but looks to me have always been, even with my vehicles, I've never cared at all what they look like. What I cared about was whether I could get in them and drive to A and back to point B safely and functionally. I've always cared more about the way things run, the way things act, than the way they look. Looking has never been really high on my list. So if you guys got questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer. My own experience with all these YouTube live streams is that I've actually reached a point where I don't really have a lot of questions to ask anymore. I've pretty much run the gamut of questions that I have to give the live streamers. I have to stop and think about what it is that I'm trying to ask anymore whenever I'm in a live stream. I mean, there's always some little question I can think of, but yes, Laura is Laura too, Corona Ken. So once again, I don't really have any, with my torn up ribs yesterday, I did my water changes on my 110, and it pretty much put me out of commission. I just, between carrying the 5-gallon buckets and dumping them in the tank, my ribs just pretty much gave out on me. I still don't have a Python. Hey Kyle, how's it going, man? Welcome to the stream. I'm running a day late and $1 short today, Kyle, so I messed up my ribs yesterday doing something. I don't think it was doing water changes because they already hurt. No, she is coming back on Friday. Friday I have to go pick her up from the airport. So 2.5 week vacation. I'm starting to miss her pretty bad. And my dogs are, yeah, that's probably what I should do, Kyle. But I like using my water on my wife's plants. She has plants everywhere outside, and I like using that high nitrate water on plants. So I usually just carry it out in a 5-gallon bucket and dump it. Hey Valley Fish, welcome to the stream. No, Shelley, the macaroni, cheese, and tuna is not getting old. When I was 16, my dad, my younger brother, and I, and one of my dad's buddies named Ralph, took a month-long whitewater trip from the start of the Mississippi River in Canada is, gosh, my memory's going. Well, there is a whitewater river in Canada that starts about midway up in the central part of Canada and flows north to the Arctic Circle. It joins up, the Mississippi River joins up with the Moose River almost at the Arctic Circle. And it dumps out into Hudson Bay is actually where the Moose River dumps out. And we thought and thought and thought about what kind of food we could take with us that would be usable and lightweight and would be something that would be nourishing and that we would enjoy. And so we took boxes of macaroni and cheese, and we decided that we would use tuna as the meat to put in that macaroni and cheese. And I developed a taste for it on that whitewater trip. Yeah, I'm loving these Endlers, Kyle. I developed a taste for it on that whitewater trip, camping out in the middle of nowhere on a sandbar or a riverbank. And I've loved it ever since. So yeah, it doesn't sound very good. Doesn't sound like an Epicurean delight, but I dearly love it. Kyle, I could never have afforded these Lucas's Tiger Rainbow Tiger Endlers, but Jim gave me a slew of them. Let me see. I may actually even have someplace here. The trash pile that is my house. Oh, God, my ribs. I don't see him there. Huh. Sorry, Pete. Yeah, sorry, I can't find them. I was looking for, I've got a couple of notebooks of pictures. I'm gonna have to dig those up, but I've got pictures of a before and after of us on the whitewater trip. Corona Ken says, I do use a submersible pump, just move it from the tank to a bucket under the bath faucet. As Kyle said, you can collect the old water, then use it as needed for plants. Yeah, I'm getting to the point where I almost... Kyle says that he's got a pipe running from his fish room to his backyard. It waters his lawn, but he can easily attach it to a tank to store for my garden. Yeah, I can't begin to tell you how great that water is for plants. gardens, flowers. Laura asks, has anyone ever used ESHA meds at all? I've never even heard of them, Laura. So no help from me. Yeah, that's a new one on me. Is it a new med, Laura, or is it something that's been out a while and we just have never heard of it? Obviously, I've not seen it in any store or anything, so it's a new one to me. Yeah, there are a bunch of medications, Laura, that are in UK that we don't ever see in the States. You're going to have to find somebody from the UK that can answer that question, methinks. Oh, God. Yes, I enjoy both Lauras. Hey, Victor, welcome to the stream, man. I'm just kind of shooting the breeze again today. I've kind of run out of ideas for topics for live streams anymore. I'm sure at some point I'll start thinking of them again, but today I'm running day late, $1 short. Anyway, I learned to love tuna fish and macaroni and cheese together way back when on that whitewater trip, and I've enjoyed it ever since. It's definitely a strange flavor, and it's definitely something that you would really want to get used to before you ate it a lot, I assume, but for me it brings back memories of that. I'm telling you, 1,000 miles from anywhere, out in the middle of nowhere, on the side of a riverbank or on a sandbar. After paddling your butt off all day and being eaten alive by delta wing flies and horse flies and mosquitoes. It's really a great taste. Kyle says his dwarf Praecox rainbow started breeding and he's going to pull some eggs today and move some killies around to breed as well. Those Bellari rainbows are growing good, Dwayne. Well, I'm ready for a female. Yeah. Well, Shelley, I agree that Velveeta cheese added to it is good, and of course now when I make it, I use the fancy version with the liquid cheese. But we were going for lightweight and yet nutritious and would actually feed us, and man, that tasted good. Kyle, I was in a canoe by myself, and we had all of our supplies in big old black rubber bags that had straps that sealed them, and I also had an inner tube in my canoe for flotation if the canoe turned over. And I would paddle. You know, you do a J stroke when you're white watering. I would paddle. I'd lift the paddle and wait for the horseflies would do a figure eight between me and that black bag up on top of that black inner tube, and I would paddle and then click. I'd drive one to left field, and then I'd paddle and click. Every Sunday is kind of happy. Welcome to the stream, and I'm getting ready for some shrimp today. Yay! Congratulations. And any tips on culturing Daphnia? I actually think that they prefer being outdoors, that outdoor and generally good weather is the best place to culture them. But Daphnia it's like try and get rid of them. If you put them in a tank of any sort, or even a 5-gallon bucket, good luck on getting rid of them. You almost have to freeze them out to kill them. You know, I've seen several people that have them in outdoor ponds year round, and they survive. Even when it freezes, they survive. So I would just say feed them well, and you might feed them with rapashi powder, vegetable scraps, just like you would scuds, and any kind of flake food would probably do a good job of feeding Daphnia. Yeah, Lucas, I got my Daphnia from Lucas too. And my 5-gallon scud bucket, while it's still doing well, I just haven't felt like it's exploded like I expected it to. I'm not sure what exactly has gone wrong, but they're still in there and I can still see them. But when I go to dip them out, I rarely get enough to feel like I'm actually putting something in the tank for my fish to eat. It's been a while since I tried it, so I should probably try it again. And I'm using a little like a colander. It's a screen that has a really super fine plastic mesh, fine enough to catch Daphnia or scuds. And I don't know, maybe I'm just not scooping them well, but somehow some pond snails got in there, and I've got tons of pond snails in that bucket, but my scuds and my Daphnia are not doing that great. And yes, they are a great food source. Either one, scuds or Daphnia. Now, if you put them in a shrimp tank, scuds and Daphnia will kind of outcompete your shrimp. So you might wait until your shrimp get fully established to completely inoculate that tank if you put them in a shrimp tank. I've noticed that in videos that Lucas is kind of grumbling about how the scuds will almost outcompete his shrimp sometimes. That's the one issue about scuds, more or less. Laura, I am so looking forward to being in Peru. I have wanted to go. I actually wanted to go to Iquitos, Peru, forever. But mainly I wanted to go to Iquitos because that's one of the centralized areas that all the fish from that region end up in. And I always thought that I'd be able to, get there and then take a day trip one way and a day trip another way. But going to southwestern Peru, which is where we're going to be, it's one of the last places besides Colombia that you can go and actually be pretty much in a pristine area and still collect all the fish that you want. I mean, there's a limit, of course. But in Brazil now, which is where I'd really love to go, if I had my druthers, I'd be spending a month on the Rio Tapajos and collecting every fish that I could, including my L260s that I love so much now. But you're not allowed to do that anymore. Brazil has pretty much put the kibosh on people coming in and collecting and carrying off. You almost have to be a science person with some kind of scientific permits to even be able to get fish out of those anymore, other than the kinds of fish that the locals can still sell to the collectors. But yeah, Peru, southwest Peru is going to be a really interesting place to go because the water is going to be slightly cooler because it is closer to the Andes, closer to the mountain melt-offs and runoff, and it is it's in kind of an interesting area. It's a national forest down there where we're going, so it's not going to be an area that gets a whole lot of traffic. I'm not even sure we'll run into anybody else the whole time we're out there, but we might. I don't know. The types of plecos, which is mainly what I would love to collect, are kind of, I think they're a little more rare there, and they are more cooler water plecos. I know there are some epistogrammas there, but again, they are a little bit different. The number of tetras that are there is not going to be as high because most of the tetras are warmer water loving creatures, but there are a lot of really interesting fish and catfish that come from that area, so I'm tickled to death. And because of that, I've been pestering the crap out of Bob and Corey about let's get this nailed down on paper, the days that we're going to be gone, so that we can set our Ian Fuller is one of the people that will be going from Gold Wild Peru, and Ian Fuller is he's basically a master on catfish and tetras and small cichlids, and just going with him will make the trip half again more worth than just the actual collection, because the man is an encyclopedia of knowledge about that area and about fish in general, and I'm really looking forward to having the time to talk to Ian Fuller. It's one thing to email someone and carry on a conversation online and those kind of things, but actually getting to be able to spend time with a person for 2 weeks really makes it that much better. It just, you get a feeling for the person. Hey, cichlid dude, welcome to the stream. I'm pretty much rambling today and be more than happy to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So if you've got questions, please bring them up. But I am so looking forward to spending time with Ian Fuller out in the wild collecting, and try to just get a piece of his knowledge about the fish that he knows and his experiences and his fish keeping tips. And to add Corey and Bob to the equation is just icing on the cake, I don't know two guys that I'd more rather spend a couple of weeks with getting to know than those two. So yeah, I'm super stoked about Peru, and I will do as much filming as I possibly can. I keep cringing when I think about Dustin's video where his camera goes overboard. I'm trying to think. Laura, to my knowledge, there is nothing that we can't collect, and that's the major difference between that area of Peru and Brazil. I don't think that there are that many limits on collection in Ecuador or Colombia or a lot of those countries in that area, but I think there are more and more every day, and that overfishing for the hobby trade has created situations where, one, the locals can make some money, but two, they have overfished, and with the shipping conditions that they're in and the way they're treated, we're killing a lot of fish trying to get fish into the hobby trade. So on the one hand, Brazil is protecting its endemic fish, but on the other hand, they're building dams which are killing the same fish. So like L260s, we don't really know if when that dam in that area gets built, whether L260s will even be able to survive in the Rio Tapajos anymore. So it's kind of a mixed bag from Brazil. I understand, and I can empathize with them realizing that a natural resource of theirs is pretty much being run out by over collection and poor methodology getting the fish to shipping, and poor methodology shipping the fish into the United States where they are actually able to survive. It's 6 1/2 dozen. It's my topic where I talked about is the hobby actually good for the wild? Comes into play here. How much good does the hobby do, and how much harm does the hobby do? I think we should all empathize with the local governments in the area that are starting to draw down on the species that they're concerned with being fished out in the wild, But by the same token, we should also ride their butts about building dams which will potentially kill that same species, and it will be no longer available anywhere except in the hobby, So on the one hand, the hobby may have had a lot to do with the removal of many species in the wild, but on the other hand, the hobby may be the only place they can survive now. I saw someone say not too long ago that tigers were pretty much off of the endangered list in several areas now. But unfortunately, it's not tigers living in the wild in their natural habitat. It's tigers that are living in zoos. Or maybe they were just talking about how it has rebounded. And the same thing goes with pandas. Yes, there are more pandas alive today than there were, 20 years ago, but it's because of all of the scientific work that's being done in China to, pump them full of hormones and make them all give birth to as many pandas as possible, and so it's quite the trade-off. We as humans destroy the habitat where the creatures live, and then we move heaven and earth to keep them alive by all kinds of unnatural means. So, it's a mixed bag. I really want to collect some tetras, and there are splash-like tetras there, and I really want to collect some Corydoras. There are some. That's mainly what Ian Fuller's angle is, and the guy that writes that runs Amazonas magazine, Hans Evers, he is a big Corydoras person, and he has been there several times because there is one pretty far away area from the camping area that is especially there are Corydoras that you can't find anywhere else that Hans Evers and Ian Fuller are always going to try to collect these Corydoras, and I'm especially looking forward to that if we get to go to that area. I've got all kinds of ideas about what I want to collect and how I want to collect it. I was looking at Heiko Blair's page. He has a new Heiko Blair net for sale. Unfortunately, it's like 400 pounds for one of them. But it's a really nice, heavy, big square net that you stick under plants growing on the surface of the water and pull it up, or you drag it on the bottom. Yeah, Corona. It's two sides of the same coin, actually. The Asian arowana, as population expands, as fish become popular in the hobby and people are trying to make a living, you can't blame people for trying to survive. They're trying to make a living, and if Asian arowanas is what everybody's buying, then they're out there trying to catch as many Asian arowanas as they can. But yeah, in my mind, what needs to go on is that we need to have a equal side collection, discovery of new species with extreme maintenance of habitat and setting aside habitat as not a national park, but as an area that is free from farm runoff, cattle farming runoff, industrial pollution, that these areas need to be left pristine. And yeah, Laura, me too. I once wrote a poem that was simply, "The planet Earth's only trouble lies between the ears and eyes of man." And that's basically what I was talking about. In a geological scale, we haven't been around that long, and we're probably not going to last that long in a planetary geological scale. So unless we do something pretty soon to change the way we're acting and behaving and overpopulating the planet, we're going to be a footnote in the planet's history. And you can look at the wild. Even animals don't shit in their own nest because they know better. They know that that's going to kill them, and basically man thinks that the planet is an ATM machine with unlimited withdrawals without any consequence, and Cichlid Dude is asking me what my view is on tank rays versus wild caught versus F1. Well, I mean, you can actually say that F1 is tank rays. And when you get down to F4 and F5 and F6, unless you have really spent some time collecting fish from other breeders and back crossing them into your lines, and unless you have added some wild caught blood back into your lines again, we start getting into an area where the bloodlines have gotten thin. Now that takes quite a while, but some fish breed and raise up and breed and raise up and breed and raise up pretty quickly. So you can very quickly, in a number of 6, 7, 8 years, reach a point where the bloodline has gotten so thin and so stretched out and so culled towards some attribute that you really desperately need to introduce some new blood back into that line again. When I bought my I'm not arguing that, Cichlid Dude. When I bought my L260s for my 110, my L260 breeding setup, I bought 4 juvenile F1s, and I bought 2 slightly older wild-caught L260s. Now, part of that was because of the price. I could get the juvenile L260s for $25 a piece, so I bought 4 of them. I spent $100 on 4 L260 juveniles, and I bought a pair of wild-caughts that cost me $60 a piece. So I spent $120 on 2 wild-caughts and $100 on 4 juveniles. Now, of course, you've got a lot of investment raising juveniles up. Food, water conditioner, power, lights, what have you. But yes, and I really like an F1 generation because, as you say, it is closest to the wild, but it is also tank bred so that it is more accustomed to living in a tank as opposed to a stream in nature or a river in nature, and it's more accustomed to our water qualities. It's more accustomed to our TDS, to our pH, to the impurities in our local water. So yes, I think F1 will survive better, that they're better for shipping, and that they're better for survivability in our tanks. But depending on how fragile the species that we're talking about is, if you let your water quality go, there are some species that it doesn't matter whether it's wild-caught or F10s, they're just not going to tolerate it well. Too much nitrate, too high a TDS, built up with organics. They're just not going to take it. So in a lot of cases, F1 versus wild-caught or F10 versus wild-caught actually makes no difference in the species. Like there's some species like Ultima Angels that, like the ones Charles has got, that the transference from the wild into our water conditions here in the U.S. or in the U.K. is critical. Hey, JW, welcome to the stream, man. It's critical because they are used to, in the wild, living in an environment with such a low pH that there are a lot of pathogens that can't survive. They don't have to worry about developing immunities to a lot of different pathogens because the environment they live in won't support those pathogens. And that's great for them living in the wild, but when you turn around and drop them in a 7.5 pH, suddenly they are subjected to pathogens which they have never developed any immunity to before in their entire life and generations back. So it's really critical to get those wild-caughts past that stage alive, because they are, not only do they have to worry about normal pathogens and transshipping issues and starving issues, but they also have to worry about all these new diseases and pathogens that can suddenly hit them from this new pH, where those pathogens and diseases and parasites can survive, and these fish have no immunity to it. So it's a real balancing act between wild caught and F1 a lot of times. Well, you guys are pretty much letting me do all the talking. If you have questions, I'd be glad to answer them. And I don't know whether I'm stepping on anyone else's toes here. Right back at you, Jeremy. Much love, man. How are those fish doing, Jeremy? Okay, so JW Aquariums is going off at 6. And that's 6 his time, I'm assuming. Cichlid Dude is asking me, do I think Anubis will make a difference in an African cichlid tank? The only Rift Lake African cichlid that I have ever kept, or that ever really appealed to me, is the Maui eye biter, the Compressiceps. And it's been a long, long time since I kept them. And at the time that I was keeping them, I kept very few live plants because I didn't have a clue about how to keep them alive. But my experience with those fish tells me that they will destroy plants. Now, Anubis are from Africa, and they are very tough plants. They're have a very leathery-like leaf. They're tough stems. They're rhizome plants, so that they don't really have to be attached to a substrate. But I mean, I would try them if I was going to set up a Rift Lake African cichlid tank. Ouch, Laura. Laura says she bought some new cardinals last week and they've developed ick. Look like she's going to be doing water changes with salt for the next couple of weeks. I've always kind of steered away from salt as a salt as in table salt or Hey Susan, welcome to the stream. I saw that you just put out a video. I recommend everyone to go check out Susan's new video. I was just going live as it came out, so I'll have to check it later, Susan. Cardinals are devilishly difficult to keep alive sometimes, depending on the shape they come in and how the local fish store has treated them, how the shipping has treated them. They can be devilishly difficult to keep alive. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. When I said table salt, I meant aquarium salt. And I have always strayed away from aquarium salt, using aquarium salt as a back in the day, what we used for treating ick was and to my mind, and don't quote me on this because I may be off base, to my mind the idea of using salt is to break down the free swimming form of ick, because that's what ick does. It gets on the fish, it changes into a free swimming form, which then goes back into the water, and then that free swimming form will eventually reinfect your fish again. And that's how the ick gets so far out of control. And what you're doing with salt is that you are breaking down the free swimming form of ick's ability to fight whatever medication you are using in trying to kill the ick. So there are other things that you can use to do that same process, and a lot of them are included in medications that you buy for ick. Back in the day, I think we used malachite green to break down the free swimming form's ability to fight off medication, and we used heat. We would raise the temperature in our tanks because it speeds up that life cycle. The amount of time that the free swimming form of ick spends in the tank, if you can shorten that life cycle so that it is less able to swim around in the tank and reinfect, that it has less time to swim around in the tank and reinfect the fish, the more likely you are to slowly get rid of that. So a lot of people just use heat, because if 50% of free swimming ick in 7 days reinfects your fish, then if you can speed that up to 2 days by speeding up the life cycle, then you're down to like 10 or 12% that can reinfect the fish again, because of the logistics and the amount of time that they have. And yeah, Susan's chiming in and saying high heat is what gets it done. So yeah, I used methyl blue too. And malachite green and methyl blue are basically dyes that are poisonous in certain concentrations. They have the downside of getting in your silicone. All of your in-tank stuff will have that blue or green tint to it for a long time until it breaks down. But there are other newer things that you can use that are basically designed to break down, because that's the problem we have. We treat these diseases with products, and a lot of times the creature themselves have built up a defense system against that kind of stuff. So you need to do one thing that breaks down that creature's defense system, and then you need to try to kill it with something. So yes, there are a lot of people that swear by heat, and to be honest with you, you can cure ick by having 7 tanks or plastic bowls of water that are exactly the same, and take all of your fish and put them in one tank for 24 hours, and all of the free swimming form that is born in that, released into the water in that 24 hours, you take those fish out of that tank and you put them in the second. And since you have 7 tanks and you're doing each tank a day, that means the first tank will go 7 days without that ick free swimming form being able to reinfect a fish. And if it can't reinfect a fish, it dies. So in 7 days, all the free-swimming ick in that tank will die. And then at the end of the second day, you pull those fish out and put them in the third tank, and all of those free-swimming form of ick in the second tank will die in 7 days, and you repeat that process for 2 weeks. So they go in each tank twice for a day, and you do it in a strict order so that for 7 days, that free-form swimming cycle of ick cannot infect a fish and dies on its own. So there are lots of ways to approach killing certain creatures, pathogens, diseases, and salt has always been something that I used as a last resort if I had fish that were having a hard time. Like if you get some fish in that have ammonia burn on their gills really badly for whatever reason, salt is something that helps a little because it makes it easier for them to osmoregulate the fluids going in and out of their body, and it also makes it easier for them to respire. So use salt if that's what you believe in, but I would tend to shy away from aquarium salt as a regular medication. Now, every medication that we use is some form of salt or another, usually. Like I said, the blues and the greens are dyes, but all of the salts that we use as medication are salts too, but they're not aquarium salt. All right, guys, it looks like we're coming up on an hour, and I'm sorry that I missed my regular stream time yesterday. I feel a little better today. I put a lot of heat on this area, and hopefully I'll just be fine. All right, guys, thanks for coming out. Yeah, Epsom salt's a little bit different story, Susan. Epsom salt is something that actually helps fish pass stuff through their digestive system. I'd be a lot more likely to use Epsom salt than aquarium salt. And it's not because aquarium salt is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's that you're changing the way your fish survive in their environment so that when you pull salt out of the tank, they're going to stress to get back to being used to not being in salt again, So that's why so if you use heat and salt to cure ick, not only are your fish going to go from 82 degrees, suddenly back down to 75 degrees and have to go through that process. Now there's no longer going to be salt in the tank, and it's going to be removed from the tank, and it will also cause your fish to have to go through another stress point getting down. Hey, FU2 says, I'm sorry I turned into the middle of the 7 tank description. No, FU2, you do not medicate those tanks. It's just regular tank water. And it is literally the life cycle of ick to infect a fish, then give off another life cycle form of themselves, which is a free swimming form that will live for 7 days outside of a fish before they can reinfect. In other words, they've got 7 days to go from the free swimming form back to a cyst on your fish. So literally in 2 weeks, using 7 tanks of the same water, the same heat, the same everything, you can put a fish in one tank, pull him out in 24 hours, let all of those free swimming form of ick die in 7 days, because you're going to go 1 tank one day, 2 tank the second day, 3rd tank the 3rd day, 4th tank the 4th day, and by the time that fish gets back to that first tank again, there will have been 7 days pass, and the tank will be free of the free swimming form of ick, so it can't reinfect. So literally 2 weeks through those 7 tanks, 1 day at a time, ick will not survive. Your fish will no longer have ick, and there will be none left to reinfect them. Now, if you got a whole 100-gallon tank full of fish, not many people are going to have 7 55s set up with the same water conditions that they can do that with to put that many fish in. But for a single fish, it's not as hard. That's just old school stuff, FU2. It's not any great insight or anything like that, but it shows you the mindset that you should be thinking about in order to understand the pathogen, the disease, the whatever it is that you're trying to cure your fish of. If you can actually understand its life cycle, how it infects, the ways that it infects, the ways that it is spread, then you can use that knowledge to attack that pathogen disease. And that's kind of the way, and we didn't have a lot of really good medications back then. So people figured it out, that you could do it this way and never really harm your fish, because basically they just basically get less and less ick for 2 weeks. All right, hey Nisi, welcome. Hey Dank Tanks, hey Flynn's Fish Farm, how are you guys doing today? I blew it yesterday and wasn't feeling well, so I'm doing my makeup stream right now. I hear that Corey is live on Instagram, and I know Danny's Aquarium was running too. So I'm probably about to drop out here and get out of other people's way. I know there are several other people that are coming along. But yeah, I really, you are more than welcome to use salt as a cure-all, as a medication, but think of it as a medication. Don't think of it as, oh, I'm just throwing a little salt in my tank, Laura. Think of it as another medication that you are using. Because medications are a double-edged sword. They are good for clearing your fish from issues, but they're also dangerous in the sense that it's not something your fish would naturally ever run into in the wild, and so there are a certain amount of stresses that are created. Now I know, I wouldn't argue a bit with what Corey would tell you about medication, because Corey has a lot more experience than I do in selling fish, and he medicates regularly, and I just come from an old school method where that just throws me into conniption fits. The idea of every time I get a fish to medicate them is just alien to my way of thinking. So you need to take all the things that I say with a grain of salt and understand that there are other opinions, and that some of these people have a lot more experience than I do with using the things that they're talking about. I just always have shied away from over-medicating my tanks. And sometimes that's detrimental to my fish. Sometimes I should over-medicate and keep my fish alive, and oftentimes I will under-medicate and lose fish because of it. All right, guys, I'm out. You guys have a good Sunday, and I'll try to do a couple of pop-up live streams next week. Yeah, kiss method, Jeremy. All right, man. You guys have a good day. I'm out.